The bigger they are, the harder they fall!
Hello, hello, hello. My name is Mojo, and I've got another great character concept for DKO. This time, it's the Greek goddess of the moon and the hunt, Artemis. Being known as a huntress means Artemis is normally depicted with a bow as her primary weapon, but I think we'll probably need to do something a little different for DKO, considering the brawling and melee-centric nature. With that in mind, I'm going to base Artemis on a hunting dagger with some bow shots mixed in. So, a lot of her lights would be pretty short range and have low damage, similar to how Loki seemingly was intended to be. Honor slashes with multiple small hits give the quick and deadly feeling while not being particularly special. Her heavy attacks would be where her bow first shows up. Her tap heavy, single arrow shot, fired in a straight line. Similar to Soul's tap heavy, but without the negative warp distance. That comes in later. Her charged heavy would trade Soul's reach for a spread shot. The extra charge time used to knock more arrows before she fires. Then, with her aerials, I think the role should be reversed. Her light air being up to 2 hits, the first being a short range stab, while the second is a bow shot that, if it hits, sends her bouncing back. There's your negative warp distance. Heavy air relies solely on the dagger as she brings it up and then around, and a 2-hit animation that can be interrupted, but hits relatively hard. From there, we get to her abilities. Everyone's favorite part, and I think these are going to be pretty cool. In Smite, Artemis doesn't have much in the way of a movement ability, so there's 2 ideas that spring to mind, for me at least. The first relies on Tusky, the boar from Artemis' original ultimate. She could theoretically hop on the Tusky and launch herself in a similar manner to Hercules. But reactivating the ability would instead send Tusky rocketing down through the rest of the arc while she hangs in the air. The other idea I had can be boiled down to just a grappling hook on the moon. An arcing swing that lets Artemis come up and over the edge of the stage while kicking anyone in her way. I'm sure there's some way to bring in the myth-accurate chariot, but I haven't the slightest idea how. From there, I want to reference her first ability in Smite. Known as Transgressor's Fate, in Smite it allows her to place a trap that, when stepped on, deals tick damage and roots for a moment. Unfortunately, so far DKO doesn't really have a root mechanic. However, though Artemis would be a great way to introduce one in my opinion, I have other ideas for how to convert Transgressor's Fate. There's 2 in total, and I think both of them would be a blast to have. First idea is an ability similar to Amir's Freeze, but not quite. When activated, she'd start to channel the ability, and for the duration, she'd get 3 arrows she can fire from her bow as a projectile with similar speed and range to Athena's spear, but lower damage. First hit would slow the target as vines and roots wrap around them. The second hit stuns as they're wrapped head to toe in those thorny vines. Then, if they still have a third shot to fire, and they hit a target stunned by this ability, the trap explodes, launching thorns and roots in all directions. The target is launched back, every enemy within a short distance of them is hit as well, slowing and knocking them back. The other option I have in mind would be to recreate the original Transgressor's Fate in DKO. A deployable trap that could be used as a combo piece for some highly skilled players to work around. Suffice to say, I wouldn't be very good with it. When placed, the trap has a second or 2 startup animation before it's primed, and then if an opponent is knocked into it, or steps on it, their momentum is immediately stopped, and they're stunned. No launching someone through the air and clipping them off the edge of the stage with a trap. It's just not fun. We don't need another Arthur. The second idea would make Artemis a little more chess-like in my opinion. Though I don't like it as much as the first, I think it's still a good idea and would make for great combo videos for content creators like myself. With that out of the way, we move on to her third DKO concept ability. Since Artemis in Smite is a pretty stationary character that relies on quick hits and high damage, her second ability, Vengeful Assault, doesn't translate too well to DKO. Vengeful Assault in Smite is just a self buff that increases her movement speed and attack speed. And while another movement speed stim is fine, I think we can do something better. My first concept for the DKO version of Transgressor's Fate did take inspiration from Vengeful Assault, And if not used, a toggle ability that gives her a few damaging projectiles would make for a fine option for her third ability. If we do go with my first ability concept, then I think replicating Suppress the Insolent would be for the best. An AoE arrow volley that slows anyone hit would be a mix of Thanatos' Soul Leech and King Arthur's Soaring Edge, and I think that would be a good combination. Not something easily used for combos, but if you could launch it off the stage, you might be able to use it to hit stun someone and get a kill here and there. Not to mention, with a short enough animation, probably be able to use it to bait some dodges. With all of that in mind, I do still have her ultimate ability to cover, don't I? And full honesty, I just want to rip it straight from Smite. Her ultimate in Smite is called Caledonian Boar, the boar in question being known as Tusky, and it's just iconic to her character in my opinion. Summoning Tusky to have him charge at opponents and stun them is just perfect. Give him a duration of maybe 6 or 7 seconds, and an internal cooldown of when he can charge the same opponent for 2 or 3, and he'd be honestly terrifying. Even if he doesn't do a ton of damage, having a stun on a stick that roams the map for a duration is, in my opinion, even scarier than Wukong's clone. That's saying a lot, because I'm a monkey main. This gives her a kit that, while not being the flashiest, would be rather terrifying from start to finish. I do, of course, have a few ideas for some traits she could have. Clearly a trait that buffs Tusky is a must, and depending on the strength, could be a minor or divine trait. I also think she would do well with a trait that applied a slow with any of her attacks with her bow, or a bleed from any strikes with her dagger. And as someone that very much doesn't do well against stealth characters, a divine trait that gives you a better way to track invisible targets like footsteps or even an after image would not only fit the goddess of the hunt to a T, but it would be pretty strong while still being fairly niche. I personally want there to be more traits that are strong but niche, so I have a reason to have multiple builds set up for the same god. Now, just like before, if you have any ideas or complaints, please call me a dumbass. I don't mind. Drop them in the comments below. I really and truly would love to have a greater discussion with anyone and everyone about these concepts and ideas. And of course, thanks for watching.